Council meeting to order, June 5th. It's 7:05 PM. And if you would join me in pledging the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here. Here.
Ken Jones,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer is absent, David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none. Communications by and petitions from visitors, and we have Chip Courtwright online with PN&D engineers, and also Sam Greenwood and Tony Chanella. So if you guys like to come up, and the council online has asked that we try to get close to the mics so they can hear us this evening. And we'll have an update on the fiscal year 2019 build grant.
Okay, Tom, Melina, can you hear us? Or me?
I can.
Thank you.
Okay. So Chip is on the phone, Tony's here and I'm here, and you guys got sent a PowerPoint and then a drawing, conceptual drawing as well. And I'm gonna run through the PowerPoint, and Tony and Chip are really the guys who are gonna talk about the drawing and all the kind of stuff like that. What I'm gonna talk about is what and how we have to move forward to get this grant, to get the best odds to win the grant, which is like a lottery. Okay, so, a little button. Okay, so just to be clear, this is the federal build grant $25 million application, not the tier 1 state grant, which we're applying for both. We will find out about both in December, January. The state grant funding is done in the state budget of 2021. It's very confusing. This grant, we will know that the funding exists right now. We know it's there. Okay, so there's $900 million available. It's split 50% between rural and urban communities. The definition of rural is 200,000 people or less. The maximum award is 25 million. We're going all in. 900 million per state, and 90, sorry, 900 million, yeah. And it's due by the 15th, and Chip and Bree are working diligently on the application, and we're feeding them information. And the most important thing to remember is that there's 8 merit criteria, and everything we do, every improvement, upgrade has to somehow tie back to those criteria. That's how you win the prize. So the big criteria are safety, state of good repair. We can get those real good. Economic competitiveness, quality of life, environmental protection, innovation, and partnerships. So again, I want you guys to keep the focus on the fact that what the improvements are have to meet those criteria. We're doing a cost-benefit analysis of how these things help Cordova into the future, how they create economic development. The drawing is conceptual. We're not going to spend, $100 grand on a drawing and get it down to a point where it's perfect when the odds are low that we'll get the grant. And that is expected. That is how the grant works. They understand that when you win the lottery, you get to really tweak on the grant. You'll do a lot of the drawing. But you still have to keep those concepts, those ideas of how the economic impact will be there. So the nuts and bolts of this is 8 feet by 10 feet down this 20 feet of corridor is not important right now. Okay? Get that? Okay, so here's your beautiful conceptual drawing. There are copies on the table back there if anybody wants one. So keep this in mind as we're walking through this little PowerPoint. And then you can interrupt anytime if you want to ask Tony or Chip or I questions. So economic competitiveness. We all know how good Cordova is. We're in the top 20 all the time. And all of that stuff will be put into the grant. And that's important in the application to set up how we are very important, not only to Cordova, not only to Alaska, but to the nation. And we've done that a lot. In other
Sam,
grants.
I'd add here that we have Raincoast data. They've actually compiled an economic analysis for the harbor upgrades and renovation, and that's actually included as part, a really large part, about half of our efforts that we're performing right now.
So Chip, is that a cost benefit analysis?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, based on the cost benefit analysis provided by Raincoast data, we're ranking pretty high. The BCA number is about 3.4. Anything over about 1 shows a strong benefit to the community. So things are looking favorable in that arena.
And some of the things that we on the ground would be thinking about is, the moorage, we're going to increase the moorage demand. We're going to gain moorage for larger vessels. We're going to get some additional cranes are on there. These are all things that go into that cost benefit. And some possible seasonal business opportunities. So those are kind of things that we on the ground think about. Safety and state of good repair. I mean, I think you could spend 3 hours just talking about this, but you all get it, right? Docks and gangways will be replaced. The tripping hazards will be gone. The uneven surfaces will get up to code wire, fire, and electrical utilities. I really hope that the drive down dock will eliminate a large amount of congestion at the existing boat ramp where people can put their nets on, they can do things. And I mean, the congestion I look at every time out my window, I can't believe somebody hasn't got ran over yet. The increased parking, another safety thing that will help tremendously throughout. And then improving pedestrian corridors with the addition of that bulkhead, all things that are safety related. Every one of these improvements that Chip and crew has come up with can go across multiple criteria. Quality of life, this is one that is pretty interesting, and I think it's a good one to try to sell because we have a pretty unique situation. A road is difficult because this is transportation grants, not just harbors. So to improve quality of life, a road is a little more abstract, but for us, we can say things like the Fisher Memorial area will kind of be incorporated into a green space and a gathering space, some reflection, some quiet time. The green space off of that could include benches and other park-like features, as well as the opportunity maybe for some pop-up type restaurants, food trucks, that kind of stuff, or vendors. It'll provide an interconnection between the Fisherman Memorial area, the Breakwater Trail, and the Veterans Memorial, all good things to include in an application. And when you can be more efficient with a drive down dock, you can spend more time in the sun and sleeping. So that's a good one.
Quality of life.
The quality of life. So it just improves all facilities for subsistence and sports fishermen as well. Environmental protection and innovation. So innovation is a tough one. I might let Chip talk about that a little bit. But some of the environmental stuff is just removing the old creosote pilings. They are not the best for the water. It will also improve the ability for research vessels and groups to come in here. Bigger moorage, better place to come to. We're going to reuse the dredge material because we are talking about a sheet pile, bulkhead. And so you got a dredge in front of that. It'll improve moorage. It'll make it easier for everybody. And oil spill response, better facilities, easier to respond. And then we're throwing around the idea of a possible sewage pump. What is it called?
A sewage pump out station,
Station.
you pull up to the dock.
And you can pump versus nothing right now.
Oh, we got the back truck.
Not for,
And on the
Yeah.
innovation side of things, we're kind of narrowing down really on the technology, the advancements in technology that have occurred over the last 30 years for both the harbor float system, the Uplands bulkhead, and a lot of the other facilities that would actually be in place. What you'd be seeing is an overall modernization of all the facilities down on the harbor that you have, and that's once again going to tie into a lot of the other merit criteria, and that's really what we're focusing on in the grant application.
Thank you. So partnerships is tough, 25 million bucks and putting some time into that. But we are working with local entities. We don't really have anything solid right now, but we're working towards trying to get either some financial or in-time materials, or even just some support with, if the grant is awarded, we will pursue, safety items such as, what are the ladders called? Up and out ladders and things like that. So we're working towards that. We don't have anything solid, so I don't want to put anything up there right now, but we hope to have at least one, possibly two there.
And along those lines too, we are, or Sam and Tony are in the process of collecting letters of support from different entities within the community, and we're going to be including those in the grant application as well.
Councilman Jones?
So as far as partnerships, could we list all the government business partnerships that we currently have with like Cam2's Wild Alaska Seafood and 60 North Seafood, as far as them using our cranes, and we're adding more cranes, so that's going to benefit them? I mean, that one route.
I'm just going to guess. I mean, I'm thinking the partnerships are more of a, whether they're going to financially or labor or parts or, I mean, I don't know 100%, but I think that's more what we're looking for right now. Letters of support from those people is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, I know we discussed a little bit about, trying to get Shoreside Petroleum on board with putting in a floating fuel dock of their own somewhere in the harbor basin. And could that be included as a partnership somehow if they, committed to building a dock, if this, allows us to free up a spot somewhere else? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a partnership that they're investing into the harbor, but this project is kind of, we're sticking to the south side,
yeah.
trying to get too far away from that.
But we have talked to them about a letter of support saying, we're committed to moving forward in the future with, possible fuel dock and things like that. So we have asked them for that.
I'll just mention on the energy efficiency side, I've been talking to Jeremiah at CTC to have the new LED streetlight fixtures that can have WiMAX or Wi-Fi as well, and they have the new smart LED fixtures. Besides losing so much less energy, they can like flash red if there's a tsunami alert and so forth. So there's a lot of elements there, and USDA has a lot of grant and matching grant programs that the two co-ops have access, and the city actually has access to as well. So, okay. Is there any other questions at this point, Council? Okay.
So this is in conjunction with the resolution that's on the agenda.
Okay. This does pertain to the resolution on the agenda. Councilman Baylor, did you have a question?
Oh, just a comment. Will this design, I don't know if flush out is the right word, but to flush out, that water does kind of stand in that harbor. Is this design going to kind of help that flow through, and does that help your cause at all?
We're really, on this application, we're focusing primarily on the infrastructure upgrades within the harbor. I think really one of the things that you kind of have to keep in mind is any project that could be seen as a discrete component or a separate project from the main overall project doesn't really lend favorably to the grant application. So things like the fuel flow or improvements to increase harbor flushing, those could be seen as something that's separate from what we're trying to portray in this grant application. So we didn't want to include that. And plus, we're kind of up against the wall on that application, on the total grant amounts, I should say.
I just had a question on the upper left-hand corner. It shows existing slip count and new slip count. Those seems like pretty big numbers.
You mean for what we're losing?
Well, I'm just not sure what they mean, the new, oh, okay, I see, we're losing, I see, so this is a before and after.
Yeah, we're losing, but we're not losing in the big side of stalls. We're
Gotcha.
getting rid of all our 24s and going with 32s on that last float that's up against the breakwater. And then also we're cutting out a lot of those 20-footers that are inside where we've made that cut now on the drawing. Those, they never get used. A lot of people put their skiffs in or leave them in. They get used once in a while, and then, you know, there's only like one bow picker that's 24 feet in the harbor anymore, so.
So if you look at the balance of the slips and the sizes in that table, you can really see that everything's trending up to the larger size, which, you know, you see with the modernization in vessels within working harbors. So we're really trying to trend up to the larger vessels and bring in more revenue from those users.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilman Jones.
I guess the only comment I would like to add to that is, you know, if you look at the number of moorage feet in the harbor, it actually increases even though we lose stalls because we've got this whole new transient float against that bulkhead. And we also have a lightering area over there by the harbor master where we used to just have 20-foot slips. And you also, you know, right now on the L float, it's one interconnected float, so you can't get into that where that bulkhead would be. By cutting that into 2 float sections, you increase the usable space of the harbor by a substantial amount. I think that's important to note. I think it's a great design. And that idea came from past public meetings in the 2013 Southville. That's when we brought it up at the Harbor Commission meeting. That was one of the things that was brought up in that public setting. So this was all done with past public meetings in mind.
The other thing I think that from past public input and from the Southville look and everything, this is all kind of within the existing footprint. So I think it's something that's pretty palatable to the public. But on behalf of council, we thank you for getting these out and getting the you know, information out to council ahead of time and having a nice concise package tonight. From the audience, if there's no objection, council, Kristen?
I just wanted to offer, when you were talking about partnerships, a few years ago, NBE had some funding where they did a lot of work around trying to educate the fleet about heat harbors. And I just thought if you're looking for partnership participation, incorporating NBE, and there was another group, I know there's some volunteers, and I think some of them came from the Science Center, but I think there was another, like a Clean Harbors group, I want to say. And so I think if those folks were involved with this as a way to get the message out about what are the improvements being made, what are the new facilities going to be, and what does that mean for the environmental impact and keeping, improving or putting these improvements to use to benefit water quality.
None of this can be heard on the phones.
Yeah, good point. Sorry, the councilman on the phone can't hear that. So basically, council, Kristen Smith just mentioned there had been a couple of environmental groups that had done work in and around the harbor and that they might be a good resource for help, you know, advocating for this and communicating the improvements that this project would make. Other questions or comments for Chip or Sam or Tony?
So
Councilman Garden.
I got one quick question. We're looking at a $25 million maximum for this. Does 25 million cover what we're looking at here?
No. Almost. I think it's 27 is what Chip and them came up with. And we looked at, we would still put everything in and we'd come up with that one way or another. I mean, we're collecting right now on revenue to help pay for the bond and everything else that I think if we were a little over, we'd find the money to continue to finish this.
Is a match one of the criteria?
No.
Okay, that's too bad, because the state money and the city money on the others doesn't have any federal funds, so that could almost all be matched. So, okay, well, thank you very much. Anything, Councilman Jones?
If we did win this, could we use this, a part of this 25 million count towards a match with the state? You know, we're supposed to put up the 5 million.
You can use federal funds to match.
So we could possibly double down if we got super lucky and lightning struck twice and we won
Right,
both
and it all
lotteries.
came out at the same time.
Yeah.
We'll phase it.
Yeah. Right,
But
but
it won't come at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
If we win both.
if we win it, it is a lottery ticket.
Right,
All right, well, thank you very much. Are there audience comments on regular agenda items? Okay, we have a pretty thin audience here tonight for those online, so, and the sun just did come out this evening too, so I don't know if that's related. So chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions, so that's 2 of our audience members with CCMC board. All 2 of our audience members, I should say. And Tony.
Hi, this is Kristen and with the CCMC, and I was just going to give a quick update. Get this microphone. So let's see, as far as where we are, the collaboration effort with NVE, we're still working on it, but we were supposed to have a meeting last night that had to get postponed because of some scheduling conflicts on the part of NVE staff, so we'll keep you posted on that. We are entering into a contract with Randall Draney, who's currently our chief financial officer. He's going to serve as our interim administrator for the rest of 2019, I think is the plan, while we're going through this collaboration process and making some decisions about how do we move forward. And we've also talked about having a special meeting with the council, I think maybe next week. So we'll be talking more about the near term for the medical center. Scott's been working really hard on getting permanent staff on board, and so I think right now we have 5 traveling nurses, but 3 of them have expressed interest in moving to Cordova, taking permanent jobs and living here, and then there are 2 CCMC staff who are going through nurses training who are also interested in nursing positions. And so if that all works out, then by the end of the year, we could be having a full permanent nursing staff, which would be pretty awesome. We've staffed up the business office, and so that should be kicking in and helping with our revenue collection in the next 6 months. The auditors are here now, and I think they said they expect to have an audit report to us by the end of July. That's what we're shooting for. It's not what happened last year, but we should have made strides over last year. And we also have heard from Medicaid that we're going to be getting an $800,000 Medicaid adjustment, 800 and some change. So that will help us catch up on our PERS liability from 2018. So that will be a really great shot of revenue for that.
That's great news.
Yeah, so that's going to be huge. And then I know Scott and Alan had some conversations a couple weeks ago with a new service provider is the only word I can come up with. I want to say like a company that wants to be talking to the community of Cordova about population health management and moving towards streamlining the system so that we're not relying on a pharmacy benefit manager as a shell game mover in between the medical center and physicians in terms of selling drugs and making money from both the medical center and the physicians, I think is how it works. But anyway, looking at streamlining how we provide medical services to city staff and ultimately to expanding that pool, because I think that's what it's all about, is expanding the risk pool and bringing in, possibly opening it up to other entities in the community. So that's something that they're talking about moving towards in 2020, which would be great, especially for the small nonprofits in town who have pretty minimal coverage. Scott has one more council meeting, and I think he'll be talking to you at the next council meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, council?
That's the nutshell version.
Councilman Gleason.
So are you guys able to pay your stuff with PERS now? Because the last time you were saying they weren't returning, they weren't answering your requests or weren't letting you pay into that.
They are, yes, I think so. I mean, we've been in communication with them. They've told us how much we owe them, so that's a step forward, which we weren't getting before. So yeah, they are letting us pay it. I think the big issue was they wanted to make sure that we were paying the arrears first, and so that's what we're going to be doing with this Medicaid adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have assessed us late fees, and we're going to be contesting that too.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we have late fees because you wouldn't let us pay our bills, so kind of circular logic in my mind, but
I think that was Chip that hung up earlier, but I think we still have Councilman Baylor and Meyer online. Do you have any questions?
No.
No questions for me.
Okay, Kristen, I was wondering how the pharmacy is doing.
great, great. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the rates of filling prescriptions, I guess I could tell you, we had, just give me a moment here.
While you're looking there, I know it was a big concern with council. I made a pretty substantial investment in moving that over, and I don't want to miss some of the positive aspects. Of what's
Yeah,
going on.
so in 2018, they filled, call it 12,000 prescriptions. And so far this year, we've filled 4,000. So I think we're on track to meet the same.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think like the all-time high was in the low 30s, and that puts you at close to 40 per day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically outperforming right out of the gate. I think they were shooting for 2 years to hit that
Yeah.
kind of 32, 33 a day mark. So that also means it's providing better service because Cordovans are getting their medications here when they need them.
Yeah, and they have all kinds of stuff. I mean, they don't just have prescription drugs, they have other,
Devices.
over-the-counter medical devices, medical supplies, things, yeah,
Good.
yep,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions, council?
And so we look forward to meeting with you when it works out for your schedule.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I don't see any school board and no school board and no student council representatives. So we have approval of the consent calendar. There's 7 items on there. Is there any that council wants to separate out? Seeing none, roll call, please.
So on the consent calendar, David Gleason,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
and Schaefer is absent. David Allison,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Jeff Gard.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, and I guess just for the record, that's the election of the Cordova Volunteer Fire Department officers, resolution supporting the Builds Grant, and a resolution authorizing a Tier 1 grant application for the Harbor Grant Program. So we have approval of the minutes of May 15th, 19, regular council meeting. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor? Councilman Gard?
I just moved to approve.
Okay, have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved as submitted. We don't have any bids to consider this evening. And so reports of officers. And council, my apologies, got a really heavy work effort over the last few weeks, which culminates in the ribbon cutting for Cordova Electric's grid scale battery this Friday evening, which council's invited to. Unfortunately, we have some pretty limited seating and a lot of guests from out of town, so we can't open it wide open. But I do want to report, and again, I've been working almost daily with lobbyist Bitney on the Alaska Marine Highway System, and it's one thing that the public has most been asking about. And so while the state budget looks terribly bleak and it looks like we're going to land on a $44 million cut to the system, that's kind of what we've been expecting for the last few months. We have been working directly with the administration on options for Prince William Sound. Once a month service in and out of Valdez for Prince William Sound and to Cordova is not acceptable. It's not going to work for us. And particularly with the Tustamina. So it sounds like there are some options, and Bitney and I have put together a pretty comprehensive report on that. I just didn't get a chance to get eyes on the last draft to get it in the packet, but I will circulate that to council and get it in the next packet for you. But I just wanted to assure the public that it's absolutely foremost on our minds. We recognize it. Of all the challenges the state's pitching at us right now, the one that the community is most concerned about is our ferry service. And we do have some options, short-term and long-term, so it's not maybe as dark as it seems, but it's going to continue to take a lot of pressure from the citizens, the business, and leadership of the community to make sure that we maintain a highway in and out of Cordova. So I wanted to cover that first and foremost. I also wanted to just give a brief recap of the Northern Edge 19 site visit. And I just want to preface it by saying these are just my perspectives, and we had other councilmen that participated in that, and Manager Lanning and Chief Hicks on the city's behalf. So as part of my mayor's report, I'd just like to open that up to Councilman Meyer and Guard and Manager Lanning to try to brief council in that fashion if there's no objection. So for my part, I thought again, we had asked for 3 things from Northern Edge. We asked them to bring a vessel to the community for an open house, asked them to consider fueling up with our local vendors to help drive some business in the community, and we asked for observers to visit the vessels. And they couldn't get any of their current class vessels, I think Cruiser was their smallest, into our shallow draft harbor. But they did send 2 of their Sierra Rescue class helicopters in. They did a search and rescue demonstration on Eak Lake and had the rescue divers come back and dive in and do rescue swimming and rescue, and then landed at the municipal strip. And I'd say we had about 200 Cordova families and kids down there, got to meet the flight crews and crawl all in and out of the helicopters. I think it was a really positive experience and some great outreach. Admiral Gray and entourage from 3rd Fleet spent 3 days in town. They met with myself and city staff and toured the community. They spent quite a bit of time down on the docks talking directly with fishermen. They met with the native village of Eak leadership and made themselves available at the Reluctant Fishermen for meet and greet. And I felt like it was really good. They provided pretty positive feedback about their interaction with the fleet, who just happened to be in from an opener. And then for the Northern Edge exercise, they invited 5 city council and staff out to the vessel, and that was Chief Hicks, Manager Lanning, Councilman Guard, Meyer, and myself. And we were able to fly out to the aircraft carrier, look at their flight operations. They encouraged us to talk one-on-one with a lot of the crewmen, and then we got briefed by the captain of the vessel and by the admiral of the fleet, and got to stand literally feet away from the wingtips of jets landing and taking off. It was very exciting. But I think for my part, when I talked about environmental issues, what I saw was a lot of enthusiasm on their part. Remember, these stationed on these vessels spend more time at sea than our fishermen, for example. And they live in that environment, and my impression was they respect it. They talked about their whale sightings as exciting. It's something that breaks the monotony and that they get to see out there. And they do report to NOAA and Alaska Department of Fish and Game, so it helps in an observer role to at least track marine mammals and their motions. I was surprised at the number of, they said they have seen as many as 60 humpback whales in a day. And but again, they're equipped with a lot of sonar and a lot of resources. But for example, on the aircraft carrier, they don't even have sonar on that vessel. And they do see, with all their air activities and whatnot, what's out there. And when I asked them what was their feeling about, for example, the whales swimming around their vessels, basically they said there was no positive or negative. The whales were kind of doing their thing, and the boats were there and the whales were there, and that was it. They were kind of moving through. So I felt like in terms of interaction and the timing, again, they're fairly far offshore, but they're moving around a lot. It's a 100,000 square mile area. And I think we aren't real excited about the timing, but they do observer roles, and they are out there having a Navy presence in our waters that hopefully acts as a deterrent to foreign fishermen and whatnot. So that's my recap, and I felt like all in all it was positive, and really, frankly, I don't have a lot of objection to their timing, but I'd like to turn it over to Manager Lanning, Guard, and Meyer as well. Thoughts. Oh, the last thing I would add is that we did take some Copper River salmon. We emphasize the importance of our fisheries and their role to protect us from threats and to be respectful in their use of the seas. And the salmon is very well received. There just happened to be 2 press crews on board. One of them said that was one of the coolest things they'd seen all day, which was kind of shocking considering what we saw. And they pulled me aside and interviewed me, and that did air on the 10 o'clock late news, and then the next day on 6 o'clock evening news. So I thought that was some great coverage for our fisheries and engagement. So
I think I would agree with everything the mayor said. I thought the salmon was that kind of exposure. You can't pay enough for that kind of exposure for the community. So I thought that was pretty good for us. I'd like to just touch base on the audit here. I know the audit's been a concern for a long time, and just want you to know that we're working really, really hard to get the audit done quickly this year, get it done relatively early for what we're used to. Today I met with the owner of the auditing firm from the hospital, and they are there, they're performing their work. They have not seen anything out of the, ordinary this year that's going to slow them down. And we talked about what happened last year, and quite frankly, it was the reconciliations of the accounts, the cash accounts that had not been done, that took significant time to reproduce those. That is not going to be an issue this year. Those are already done. So we anticipate that that'll go pretty well. In your mailboxes, if you haven't already received it, I have put budget books in there. And I will say again, as I have the previous 2 years, everything you want to know about the budget, just about, is in that book. We've tried to expand our charts and information in the budget this year, hoping to expand every year until we have an exhaustive record of our budget. So take a look. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and I would ask that if you can remember, please bring your budget to council meetings so that you can have that available to you as a resource. And then again, we're going to kick off the budgeting process here. I'm lagging a little bit behind this year, but nevertheless, we'll get started here. We have plenty of time to do this. The overriding issue here is we're going to be, you're really making some decisions about revenue for the, relative to the hospital and the school district. And just remember that all of those decisions affect us on the back end in terms of city operations. And at some point, unless we really do some significant cutting again, revenue is going to be a question. For example, if you, thinking short term, and we've been saying this for years about the hospital, that it seems like somewhere, whatever it looks like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel at the hospital, but we've got to get to that light. So there's going to have to be some decisions in the interim. It was spoken to me today, and I think the best example I can give to you is as you authorize money to be spent this week, our last 2 weeks, our experience with the pool and our need to maintain and keep up with our systems, although this was kind of an anomaly, but keeping up with our systems, how important that is for us to stay on top of it, vehicles and facilities. And the more the less money that we have, the less able we are to keep that intact. So just as a reminder, we'll be having some budgeting and strategic planning coming up. So feel free to stop in if you have questions or have comments or want to know something.
Okay, we kind of wandered into the manager's report, so I'll wander back to Northern Edge, but that's okay.
I'm done with that.
We're there. So is there any questions of Ellen there? Or comments on the manager's report?
Yeah.
Councilman Gleason.
That 800,000 that the hospital got, that's kind of a help to us, right?
Well, if you look at our bottom line of 1.2 million to get through the time frame till the end of 2019, 800,000 of that is taken care of.
Right.
I forget
That's
what
a
the
good
number
thing.
was, but if it's 1.8, 800,000 is taken care of. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think where we're going to be with them in the future is, I think their funding level, we were thinking they were going to need about 1.2. I think they're going to be at the 900 level annually.
Okay. So I'll just kind of revert back to Northern Edge experience. Councilman Guard, if you wanted to share your thoughts or perspectives on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of your perspectives on that. What I was disappointed in, I mean, the folks we went and met there seemed like good people. The equipment that we went and looked at was very impressive. The enthusiasm level of the Navy personnel was high, but as far as any of the environmentals and stuff, to get anybody, there was zero conversation about that. You could get no comments out of the captain, you could get no comments out of the admiral, and everybody else you just kind of got a blank look at. They weren't authorized to talk about that. When they talked about the whales, when they first got out there, they were spotting like up to 60 whales a day. By the time we got out there, the count was a small fraction of that. Whether that was a migration of those animals moving through, or whether that was a dispersal away from disruptions going on there, or what, but they did not answer any of the questions we had about whether we had any concerns for risks out there with any of our fish or mammal species that were of concerns to us out there. So, although it was a great show, that's what it was a show.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Meyer, do you want to share your experience or perspective?
Yeah, so my experience was probably a little different because I was downstairs in medical the whole time, which was pretty impressive. They have a bunch of doctors and surgeons and things, and down in the bowels of the aircraft carrier, it's kind of like a little city. Everyone's kind of going about their own thing. So I didn't necessarily get the whole tour and everything that you guys did, but my concern still is the timing that they do this. I think they're very professional and equipped to do what they're doing, but the timing is still what I have a major concern about.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other piece, and I know the council is going to be discussing need for a federal lobbyist. And I did get another email from Caleb Freilich, another federal funding opportunity. It's just that's no less than 4 or 5 different federal funding resources for harbor and waterfront improvements. So there are opportunities out there. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is Senator Sullivan's Alaska staff will be coming in Friday and staying through Sunday for the ribbon cutting ceremony in Nouveau. So he will have staff here, and also Senator Murkowski will be here, and her lead counsel from Energy and Natural Resources. So we'll have our great federal delegation will be here in town where we can talk to them about these priorities. And so again, Council, you're invited to the ribbon cutting, you and one guest from 5 to 6:30 at 308 Lefevre, the Cordova Electric's old power plant site there for the battery ribbon cutting ceremony. And then there's open Copper River Nouveau gallery night on Friday evening, starting at 7:30 at the Reluctant. That's an open event. And then also 4 o'clock on Saturday evening at the Science Center is their Fisheries Achievement Award, and that's an open reception and event before the Nouveau. So those are all great opportunities to interface with our state delegation. And then Senator Murkowski's chief of staff will be in town the following weekend, just on a personal time to come do some sport fishing and kicking around. So we've got some good opportunities to plant some seeds and engage. So just mention that. Is there any questions on my report or? Okay, and I will get back to regular updates, written updates, and I will copy that summary on the Marine Highway System. Also, I've scheduled for June 13th a mayor's meeting of boards and commissions. I've been a little lax in those, so I wanted to get back on a schedule with those. And then we also have a Fisheries Development Committee meeting this Sunday at 5 p.m. at the CEC office. Not the best of timing for the fleet, I understand, but it's just what fit my schedule and is available. And so we did submit some commissioner's permit applications to the commercial fisheries director and assistant director, and some of them were received pretty well. So I think the Fisheries Development Committee is going to look at trying to move some of those forward, so. All right, thank you. And City Clerk's report.
I have a written report in the packet.
Okay,
Answer questions.
is there any questions on the clerk's report? Okay, hearing none, we have correspondence as noted in the packet. Department of Community and Economic Development, the population of Cordova did increase this last year. And then we have email and survey information on the scope of work of the Northern Economics Alaska Marine Highway System reshaping project. Oh, I will mention that I didn't feel like a written response was adequate, so I was able to call and have an hour-and-a-half conversation. I had an actual interview with them about the depth and breadth of the economic impact, not only to Cordova, but to Alaska, of having regular, consistent service in and out of Prince William Sound. So under ordinances and resolutions, we have resolution 06-19-24, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, setting the mill rate for the 2019 tax year. That's on page 21 of the packet. And what is the will of council?
Got to do it by June 15th.
I can read the ordinance if council would like, or
Mr. Mayor, I move resolution 06-19-24, resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, setting the mill rate for the 2019 tax year.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilman Allison, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, though this is, there have been other expenses that we've added into this year. Our budget calls for what this amount of money raises, the 10.85 million raises. So that's what we budgeted for. So that's what I'm supporting.
Councilman Guard?
My tendency is to lean towards the 10.85, but we just blew a $250,000 hole last special meeting with school appropriations, so I don't know what's appropriate here.
Councilman Councilman Gleason, who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, and then Councilman Allison.
Why don't we just leave it where it's at right now? What'd you say it was at? 11?
What was last year's mill rate?
Yeah,
11.81.
so that fixes that. We do that.
But one of our commitments we did when we started down this path is we were going to raise X amount of dollars by property tax, so we'd spread things evenly, and this is going back in the other direction, piling all of our overs on property owners.
So Councilman Allison and then Jones.
What we did for the schools last week is for the next year's budget. It's not in 2019. And this mill rate is for the 2019 budget. So that has really nothing to do with this particular setting of the mill rate. That money that we gave the schools will have to be considered at budget time in the fall, and that indeed may affect the mill rate that we need to get from the property taxes as part of our budget, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. So the hospitals do. I mean, the hospital's going to need some more money from somewhere. However, this is what we budgeted for. We budgeted knowing that hospital liability was out there, so this is what we budgeted for. I think that's what we ought to do.
Councilman Jones?
I'd be in favor of just leaving it where it's at right now.
So the current mill rate is 11.81.
Well, I guess we don't have a current mill rate.
Okay, yeah.
2018 mill rate
You
was
set the mill rate
11.81. It's set
11.81.
every year. So if that's what you mean, 11.81 is what it was in 18.
So
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Baylor. Yeah, I would support leaving the mill rate at where it's at this point. I think it's 11.8. I had several discussions with people knowing this was coming up, a couple of business owners, and they prefer just leave it where it's at. If we drop it down and then if things go sideways, we gotta go up 2 points the next year. I think a lot of people would rather just leave it where it's at with that understanding. So I would support leaving it right where it currently is.
Okay, I've heard 3 councilmen now say that. Did you want to propose that as an amendment? Right now, we have 10.85 on the table. Was that the intent of your motion? I didn't hear an actual mill rate in the
Yeah, 'cause it's
original
in the
motion.
It's in the.
Okay, yeah,
It's in the
it's in the resolution at 10.85 now. So Councilman
I'll
Baylor,
amend the motion if nobody at the table wants to do it. And it's, so I would amend the motion to read, help me out here, is it 11.81? Do I have that correct?
yes.
Sure. You can make it whatever you
I
want.
would move to leave the mill rate at its current rate of 11.81.
So we have a
I'll second that.
motion to amend to 11.81 in a second. Discussion on the amendment. Any additional discussion, Councilman Baylor?
No, I'm good.
Councilman Gleason and other council? Councilman Jones?
Well, please.
Oh, go ahead. I got nothing.
Well, just to speak to Councilmember Guard's comment about the strategic plan, and the whole point of that was to give people some sort of consistency in their tax roll. I think that leaving it the same as it was last year still meets that directive or that objective of our strategic plan, and I would be in favor of just, let's leave it the same and fund the schools, and gives us a little more room this year too. I know the school ask is until next year, but yeah, I'm all against. I mean, I'm normally against taxes, but for this, I just want to leave it the same, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against that, and in fact, I will support this, but I just have to say that we need to find ways to spread the burden of everything out more than just the property taxes. I know that it's easy for us to do the property taxes because that really can't be petitioned on by the community or the community doesn't have a whole lot of say on what we set the mill rate at, but it's only a portion of our community that's being relied upon for the property taxes, and we need to find a way to spread that. And I know that that's been discussed and tried here before, but we need to make a better effort of supporting that. And if it is petitioned in the community, we need to fight for that and educate the people. Don't sit back like we did the last time. So.
Okay, additional discussion on the amendment. Councilman Guard?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm so much opposed to the motion, but on the fact that it is, the argument that it is meeting what we had done before just by leaving the number the same, and it's really not. What we'd committed to before was raising X amount of dollars off of property tax. And if we get into this thing of saying, well, we're just gonna keep the same number and we bump the property values up 10% on the residential and 5% on the business side, you're just doing Anchorage's same game they play up there. They're sitting there under a tax cap, so when they need more money, they just send their appraisers out and raise the value of the property. So it's really not doing the same thing. But anyway, I will support the motion.
Okay, any additional discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the amended motion carries a mill rate 11.1. Any further discussion on the main motion?
11.81.
11.81.
11.81, I'm sorry, what did I say?
11.1 is what you said.
Okay, thank you. 11.81, the amendment. Any discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, and that is a
Yes, I
voice
should do
vote,
the
right?
roll call, so.
It's a roll call. Okay, roll call vote.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the motion carries. The next item is Resolution 06-19-25, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing amendment to the fiscal year 19 budget in the amount of $38,078. Excuse me, that's page 26 of the packet.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Guard?
I'm not quite straight in my head exactly. Since this had been appropriated in a prior year's budget, but then we zeroed out that budget, so those dollars really don't exist anymore as far as this is concerned?
They do exist because they weren't spent.
That was as a question.
They weren't spent, so they do exist. We're just reappropriating the same money that was in that account. We're reappropriating it to 2019 because we're making an adjustment because the truck wasn't delivered until this fiscal year.
Okay, so the money we were planning on using last year is still there? We're
Yes,
printing new money.
we're not printing new money.
I feel better about this already.
Further discussion, council? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
No, that's a roll call.
Is that a roll call? Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
unbudgeted.
roll call, please.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Ken Jones.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, next item, no unfinished business. Next item under new and miscellaneous business is council discussion of the need for a federal lobbyist. Possible staff direction. I think the idea here is, do you want to direct the city manager to go out with an RFP to seek lobbying assistance for our harbor and waterfront upgrade projects?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, and you were around more on when we started doing this for the Civic Center. What was that model? I know that the mayor and staff spent a lot of time back in Washington, D.C., did an excellent job. Do they have a lobbyist on retainer, so they used them occasionally? Was that the process, or was it strictly the mayor and staff going back and meeting with representatives and talking with the representative staff would let us know what programs and things are coming up, so we kind of had a heads up and we sent people back. And I know there's a cost to that, but it was pretty successful in the way that we did it for the Civic Center.
I think that's exactly I wasn't so much involved for the Cordova Center. That's typically exactly what happens. You have a lobbyist that's on the ground right there in DC. Very often they coordinate with your state lobbyist. I have talked to lobbyist Bitney about both Caleb Freilich and his firm and Seb Kelly and Gilman and their firm, and he has relationships with both of them, and then we could expand it to others who are kind of in that waterfront development game. But they are eyes on the ground and they can carry the message for you. Then there's key points where it can be beneficial to have staff go back to DC and plead your case. And so I think that's the idea.
For my part, I think I'd love to hear from former mayors or employees or somebody that knew exactly how we handled the last situation before I could feel comfortable spending money. I guess that's where I'd like to see what we did before, because obviously it worked.
I don't know. I think, Susan, can you shed any light?
I don't recall, or I wasn't involved in.
I'd say Sam just stepped out. Leif, were you around then really? So I don't know that we have that resource, but I can certainly touch base with Bitney in that regard. I can tell you my experience with Cordova Electric, and not so much since I've been manager because we didn't have big capital projects, but for example, when we were building Power Creek, and we had a federal lobbyist in the $30,000 to $35,000 range, and they just had open access to the congressional delegation, and really it's just the constant, persistent. It's making sure that your project stays on the top of the in basket in those super busy. And the senators and the representatives, one thing, but it's their staff that really do the footwork. And it's developing and maintain a constant dialogue with the staff and making sure that when they're advocating for projects, or when they, more particularly when they see opportunities to slip your project into a funding package and whatnot, that they get it to the right place at the right time. And it was really successful for us. And then there were times when we did take delegations, especially working on the community side, to show broad-based community support for a project across organizations and whatnot. So my feeling was we got every dollar's worth, and then having the discipline when your project's over and you do have it funded, that that you drop those services and just use them as you need them. But I will say, I spoke with Robert Venables at Southeast Conference, and he said that just about every major waterfront project in Southeast, and there have been a lot of them, we're one of the last ports to get any kind of significant federal upgrades. And they said that, Gilman's firm represented most of those, and there are others out there, but he said it would be, you're really taking a long shot to try to pursue projects of that magnitude and not having boots on the ground in DC helping you push it through. So that's just kind of that's the bulk of all the feedback I've had so far. Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I guess I would agree that, if the last 3 or 4 big projects had a DC lobbyist, I think if we're trying to get 25 million out of the feds, we're gonna have to spend a little bit, and you're right, you gotta keep it on the top of the staff's burners, to wish for any success. So if we're serious about spending our staff time and P&D's time on putting in these applications, I think we need to support them.
Councilman Guard?
Yeah, we need to be playing with somebody else's money for a project of this scope. And after buying small education and how DC works after the oil spill in '89, I did 6 months back there with CDFU and stuff, and a lobbyist is kind of like the first must in this if we want to have any chance of getting in on it. So I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
I'm kind of seeing some nods here. Councilman Meyer, Baylor, additional thoughts?
Yeah, Selena, I'm in support of getting a federal lobbyist for the same reasons that was said beforehand. I think if we're going to go after this kind of money, then we need to have someone in DC keeping it on top priority.
Well, are we gonna get somebody full-time, or are we gonna have them on a retainer? And, I don't know, the mayor, did you talk to some of these other communities that were successful getting federal dollars? So, I'll go along with the group, but I'm on the fence on this one.
Okay, what I'm thinking, or what I'm hearing, I think, is you'd like the manager to pursue an RFP, but we'd like to get some insight into what our approach was, for example, with the Cordova Center that we were successful with, and maybe reach out to some of the Southeast communities that have had recent projects, and what role lobbyists played, and frankly also which one they used, so that we can get a good RFP list going, so we have some more information for council for the next meeting. Does that sound good? Okay, thanks. So pending agenda, calendar, and elected and appointed officials list. So I think we said the other thing we went on the pending agenda, or the other thing we went on the meeting agenda for the next meeting is, Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. We do have a voice vote for the council discussion on the need for the lobbyists. So is there a motion to provide direction to the manager to pursue lobbying, an RFP for lobbying services?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thanks. And I think the manager has a direction there, so on what council's expectations are. So I think the other item for pending agenda was to issue an RFP for sorry, help me out, the CFO position, and also some background information on what the pricing structures would look like for a library.
It was an RFP for,
For consult,
That's-
for a search firm, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Search firm.
So 3, he's writing 3.
2, and I think where we left the investment firm, I don't think I heard direction to go out for an RFP. I think what I heard there was the council first wanted to see a summary of what our current investment portfolio structure is and what the fee structure is, including like a breakdown of what was our fee percentage per year over that, or what was the average fee cost over that 10-year span, and a couple other pieces of information there, so. So RFP for harbor funding, RFP for
Recruiting firm.
recruiting firm for one position, maybe 2.
2 RFPs and 1 information relative to the investment firms, which includes percentage of fees comparison year 1 to 10, question about the portfolio rating, and then we'll pick up that discussion in August.
In August to October, yeah, after when we have a full slate of council after the fishing season, so. Did we have other items for the,
Yes,
And,
you wanted to meet with CCMC board, and they picked either June 11th or 12th at 5:30, because we talked about not doing it before a regular meeting. So you have a calendar in your,
I do?
Yep.
Oh,
I mean,
Tuesday or Wednesday.
it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
gotta be a Wednesday for me.
I guess Wednesday would be better for the game letters among you.
second Wednesday, my open one, so.
So do we want to do the 12th?
Was that work for
5:30?
council? Wednesday, 5:30?
What time's our harbor commission meeting at?
Oh, 7.
6.
Oh. Thanks for telling me. Okay. You got a stacked agenda? Tony? You got anything? Oh, okay.
Do you have the stuff that we're trying to move forward that we voted on last meeting? No, okay.
You want to try and do it at 5 instead?
I don't even know if we're gonna have quorum yet.
No.
I already have one that dropped out, so.
I would kind of prefer 5 o'clock. I'd like to slip over to that harbor commission meeting if possible. What's
The whole
council?
idea is we were saying that we wanted to give it 2 to 3 hours because we said
That's right, big issue, so, well,
we can do 4.
And it's the final opportunity while Scott's here.
Tuesday's an opener, so, well, it is what it is, council, so,
Noon?
I mean, none of you guys have Monday through Friday jobs, right? So
Well,
you could do 4.
noon's not
I
good.
guess
Monday
you
through
do. You're
Sunday
the only
jobs.
one. Well, if you're
Yeah,
on a
four
Wednesday, 4 is
Four
as
or
easy
3,
as,
It doesn't matter.
I mean, they happen to have said 5:30. Do they all?
Yeah,
have
I don't know if
regular
they can
jobs?
do earlier, but if you want to switch it to 4, we'll try, but option 2 is 5:30. And, you know, it takes what it takes, but the intention is for us to be in a room and have
Who are they? Is Kristen?
the down and
hired?
dirty discussion about finances.
Here.
Yeah, well,
But
it's,
is she
it's probably our
retired?
biggest
No.
financial exposure is what happens
So?
down at the hospital, so.
Greg?
So am I hearing, Alan, that earlier in the day is tough on staff, or?
Well, it's not tough on us. We're here anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
it's their board, whether or not their board can be.
I know, but
there.
we're trying to guess at their board right now, and I don't think any of them are real 9-to-5ers either.
I think I'd go with
try
the
for-
5:30 and
Okay.
we'll try to get it earlier.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see if 3 o'clock can work, and if it's okay with their staff, let's shoot for that. And if not, then 5:30 would be the default.
And I'll see where I can get us a room too.
Okay, thanks, Susan.
June 12th,
June 12th.
3 PM, last resort, 5:30. Let me see.
I've got something for pending agenda when we're done with this one.
Okay, I think
So
we're,
what date did we decide on for the CPMC? June 10th or 12th?
12th.
that's June 12th, Melina. Yeah, we're going to shoot for 3 o'clock. If that won't work for the hospital board and staff, then we'll default back to 5:30.
Okay, I'm still gonna be out of town, but I can call in for that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Councilman Jones, you had an agenda item?
Yeah, so we had it on our pending agenda before, and then it came and passed, and it never happened, but a joint work session with the Harbor Commission and the City Council probably have to be at the end of the fishing season now to get everybody in the same
I
room.
didn't take it off. It's still on there.
I know, it just,
Oh,
we
okay.
missed
We
our
never did it. I
date.
know.
So,
Yeah.
we've got some stuff that we're working on, that we're gonna wanna be talking to council about, as far as harbor waterfront priorities for the Harbor Commission that we could use council support on, and, yeah, just like to,
Okay,
you know,
But what are you thinking about timing or
like September or something.
September?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will at least put September on it, which gives us,
That gives us time to shake out stuff with Tony that we talked about at the last meeting. And
all right, great.
we might not even have a meeting between now and then, so
Mhm.
it's pretty tough moving target with everybody's schedules.
Well, hopefully the fishing's so good that we don't have those opportunities.
That's what it's looking like so far.
Looking
Um,
good so far.
More salmon, less pollock. On the beaches, anyway. Any other pending agenda items?
no,
Okay.
I do not.
My agenda in front of me here. Okay, audience participation.
Tony,
Tony, do you have anything to participate?
got anything to say about the mill rate? You're
He's happy. Okay, spoken straight from a property owner.
And Tony happy about a mill rate increase. Holy, where
Goodness.
It's
are
an
we?
increase, we left it the
It's an
same.
increase. Your property went up 10%.
Okay, we have council comments. I'll go online first. Councilman Vice Mayor Meyer,
No comment.
Councilman Baylor.
No comment.
I'll start to my right, Councilman Guard,
I'll make it a trifecta, no comment.
Councilman Gleason,
Thanks for showing up, Tony.
Councilman Allison,
No comment.
Councilman Jones.
I echo all the comments before me.
Oh my God, really?
Okay, no comment echoed throughout the room. So we do have an executive session. I'd ask all the staff to leave. And once we go into executive session, we did strike the second item, which was 18, a recommendation from the city of attorney. We don't have that prepared for this evening. So item 17 would be a council discussion about the terms of the city manager's contract in executive session because of subjects which may be considered or matters the immediate knowledge of which would clearly have an adverse effect on the finances of the government. And again, this is just a discussion of the terms of the contract, not the manager himself. So
So move.
have that motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, we'll
Recess?
recess, go into executive session.
What time? What clock am I using?
8:18.
Okay.